Hello and welcome to the Cosmogenesis Institute, our Q&A conversation for exploration series. I'm Paul Rivera, the Executive Director and President of the Institute, along with my wife, Laura Lee, the Director of Research, Education, and Outreach. And on behalf of our Board of Directors, our advisors, volunteers, and supporting members, we do want to thank you for joining us today. The Cosmogenesis Institute is an independent, nonprofit research organization committed to researching consciousness in the human experience, following the footsteps of our founder, Dr. Felicitas Goodman. And our focus is reflected in three main areas: experience, education, and exploration. While we respect the path of academic balance, the creative pursuit of science, while advancing, conserving, and restoring a direct experience of that deeper human connection to all of life. It's part of our mission to expand our own experiential research with the multidisciplinary understanding that's available to us today. So as an educational institution, we take an open approach and we invite scholars in related fields to help broaden the scope of our own work and exploration. So that's why we call this Conversation for Exploration. On these weekly Sunday discussions, full spectrum from neuroscience and anthropology, archaeology, archaeoastronomy, eco-spirituality, philosophy, mythology, shamanism, hero's journey. It goes on and on and on, from the arts to the sciences and everything in between. And you're welcome to join us. Our presentations, we now have hundreds of webcasts and webcasts on YouTube, and also podcasts that are available. And visit our website at cosmogeinstitute.com. All of these presentations are free. And as a nonprofit, we invite you to become a supporting member. And we want to thank you, the community members who continue to support the mission of the Cosmogenesis Institute. Let's fast forward to today. Most of the time, the human experience is thought of as you are you and I am me, that my life is independent of others. In the outer world experience, it's easy to fall into the trap and the illusion of separateness. However, the truth is that the story of humanity is all about that interconnectedness to the entire universe that surrounds us and is also within us. Every atom of oxygen in our lungs, every carbon in our muscles, every calcium in our bones, of iron in our blood was created inside a star before Earth was born. I'm reminded of the song Woodstock by Joni Mitchell. It comes to mind, we are stardust, we are golden. And we've got to get ourselves back to the garden. As we look at the universe through the eyes of the James Webb Telescope, we see ourselves. Every dot of light is in an individual star is not unlike our own sun, and many of them have planets. So to understand that scope of the human story, we simply need to look up and as well look within. Aristotle put it simply, wonder is the beginning of all wisdom.
Well, yeah, and as our community can attest, we've long been exploring this enduring hope, long promised, of a golden age, a time when on a global scale, we can all work together to create a just and sustainable co-equal world where we can all flourish. We've been long examining this clash of worldviews and the paradigm shift that it will take to get there, and how we can reclaim access to an inner doorway, one that affords us the direct experience that all of life is sacred, that the cosmos herself, this womb of creation, is our home. And as we reclaim right relationship within ourselves, our community, and our world at large, we then find collectively our true place within it. And all that we are and all that we are called to be, to find that it's been there all along, built into our very DNA. That's been our path with this institute, and it's one that naturally leads to breakthrough understandings of who we are and a new vision for the world. One where science, which in my opinion has only half the equation, can finally partner up, can dance ecstatically with these age-old traditions of spirituality, which compromise the other half of the equation. Knowledge tempered by wisdom? Well, maybe then we will be fully equipped to usher in this golden age. Our guest today, mathematician and cosmologist, is among those who have been heralding this emerging new story through the many disciplines of science, tracing our origins. And here's where we see the highest role for science, that when it aims its gaze at the origin of our universe, when it too listens to the heartbeat of creation and traces the fingerprints of source, we find the universe herself is telling the same story. She's been broadcasting it on all channels. We just need to listen. And in her benevolence, she has gifted all of life with many avenues, many ears to do so. So we celebrate the scientists who are picking up on what I have to call the creation story for our times, updated and expanded and writ in the lingo of today. So let us welcome Brian Swimme, cosmologist, mathematician, longtime professor at the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco, also the co-founder and director of the Center for the Story of the Universe and the Third Story of the Universe at Human Energy, a public benefit organization. Brian has been sharing this story through his many books and films, including the PBS Journey of the Universe and a new series of short videos, The Story of the Noosphere. We want to thank Brian's co-writer and researcher on that project, our longtime friend, Monica D. Rasples, for arranging our visits with Brian. They both return on September 17th to talk about the noosphere, our link up with this emerging nervous system of our planet. But today we're here to talk to Brian about his book, Cosmogenesis, and the unveiling of the expanded universe. Hi, Brian, and welcome.
Thanks, Laura Lee, Paul. Great to be here.
Well, you know, the first question we always ask our guests is usually, what was the pivotal moment in your life that set you on your quest, that led you to your life's work? And so we're excited to follow this journey with you that you detail in full in your book and how it leads hand in hand with unraveling the life story of our very cosmos. Your title nicely encompasses the birth and its regenerative nature. It's both the backdrop and the holy grail of your story. So
yeah, let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
It was the night sky. It was just the stars, really. I've thought about it a good deal. And I think I had the advantage of growing up in the Northwest because it's always raining. So to see the stars is like, it's such a thrill. So, you know, I was a little kid and that did it for me. I mean, I didn't say, I'm going to be a cosmologist, but I was just amazed by it. And then I would in my studies, even in grade school, I would just always be attracted to astronomy and the stars. And that's it, really. It's all their fault.
So you have written an auto-cosmology, which you point out that Ursula K. Le Guin, famous sci-fi writer, coined this word back in the 70s. And she said, most of us as sci-fi writers, as fantasy writers, musicians, artists, when we look at the world from the vastness of the largest sphere, the cosmos itself, when we put ourselves in context of that, we are writing auto-cosmologies. Yeah. And I appreciate that that's been the purview of the humanities. But it's nice when a scientist actually takes on this task. It's nice when science also gives us justification for the mythopoetic language that we use. When the humanities and science can come together and tell the same story, we're on to our creation story. We're legitimizing it, right? We're saying,
completely,
yes, it's
no.
arrived. So tell us about your auto-cosmology.
Yeah, but let me start by saying your introduction captures really what I am about. The idea that science has half of the story and spirituality has the other half, or I mean, there are multiple ways of knowing. Yeah. And when we bring them together, which we are doing, because we have places like the Cuyamanger Institute, which is bringing it together. And I just heard about Tony's gatherings. In other words, I think all around the planet, there are these special nodes where an integral understanding is emerging. You know, the Deep Time Network, for instance, that Jennifer Morgan is putting together. I mean, I just find it very clear evidence that we are moving into another era of humanity, one that is organized and energized by a common creation story, just like you were saying, Laura Lee. So we live in that moment. And I can turn the question back on you to indicate what I mean. Just think of the passion that is required to stay with this process of bringing together science and spirituality for decades and thousands of interviews. I mean, my interpretation of your work is that you are intuitively responding to the universe, which is calling for another version of planet Earth, of another version of humanity. They go together so powerfully. So I just think it's really important. It's really important to gather together. One of the things that you are exploring is the nature of humanity, the nature of a human being. Who are we? Why are we here? And it's true that we're giving birth to something that's new and exciting and golden, for sure. That's true. But I want to emphasize the birthing process is who we are as well. And I just see this with your work in the Institute. I mean, wow, it is, one of the things we do so well is to search together as a group. And it inevitably means dialogue with a small number of people. That's what it means to be human. We've been that way for 100,000 years. So I just regard your work as the absolute cutting edge of this moment. I mean, it blows my mind when I see the different topics and the different scientists and the different artists that you're drawing upon. Now, what needs to be remembered is this couldn't have been done ever. I mean, never was this possible. Mm-hmm. And so when we look at the current situation on the planet, and especially the negative aspects, mm-hmm. Yeah. These are people that haven't yet taken advantage of what is happening. So we are in this transition moment, and it's a thrill to be part of it with you, and the others that we'll never know that are working on it. In southern Siberia, and they gather together with 5 others. So right. I just want to emphasize the thrill of being together. I still want to answer your question, Paul.
And I did want to say thank you for all of the accolades, but let's face it, I love the fact that you're giving voice to this with such a strong focus and eloquence that needs to be said, that you're bringing about this idea that can make it available to all of us. We don't all have to be scientists to talk about the universal discoveries and what's going on and our connection to the universe. And it takes scholars like yourself to break that ground, to make it available to all of us. So that I wanted
Well,
to.
and to ground it in
I wanted-
science. Like you said, many voices singing the symphony.
Right.
We're transmitters and
Yes.
receivers of what the universe wants to speak through us.
Right.
I appreciate that you say, I appreciate two things. You say it's not ideas alone, but deep experience that transforms we humans.
Mm.
I appreciate that through the science, through putting together the discoveries of the leading edge of science, you are creating this picture for the awe and the wonder to behold. You're getting to ecstasy that route. We go through
Yeah.
another route, but we also want that route, that we can fully embrace our identity as cosmological beings. We can have a personal relationship
Yeah.
with the cosmos, and we can see ourselves not just, hey, we're not just 200,000 years old as a human, Homo sapiens sapiens.
Yeah, this is cool.
We are 14 billion years old. I appreciate that you point out, because it took that long for the universe to go through her throes, death, life, and rebirth throes, to make us possible to speak through and sing her song. So I
Yeah.
appreciate the story that you're giving us. Yeah.
That's great. I love that. And I noticed too, when you said the three things that your institute is organized by, the first thing you mentioned was experience.
Yeah.
Experience.
Deep.
And that goes to the heart of what we mean with the phrase, the word autocosmology. Autocosmology. You know, we were exploring this idea at the California Institute of Integral Studies. Monica and I and Carolyn Cook, professor there, and we brought together philosophers and novelists.
Ah.
See, I mean, you see, we were doing your work all these years, and you've been doing our work. You know, we discover how it's like we're all searching for this, and as you say, Laura Lee, in all these different ways, So the way I was searching in Cosmogenesis was to attempt to identify how the universe was showing up in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the I had spent my whole life studying the sciences of the universe, you know, physics, mathematics, biology, anthropology. I was trying to get a comprehensive vision because I was so thrilled by this notion
Mm-hmm.
of a new, like you say, Laura Lee, a new creation story emerging. And so I was doing that just intuitively. I wanted to know everything about the universe, and it was my encounter with Thomas Berry. He was the first person that said, the reason you're so focused on learning about the universe is that you are being drawn to a cosmological way of being. Your small self is responding to the great self. And so that he was the first person that actually said those words, that a new creation story is emerging.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a guy, Thomas Berry, that studied the cultures of the planet, all over the planet, and the civilizations. And he made out of that study, he made this statement that every culture finds its harmony through its fundamental story.
Mm-hmm. It's cosmology.
So, yeah. And so even when we have these early on, and like you have villages with a particular myth and story and how essential that was, celebrated with rituals and so forth. And then when at the village level, when they drew together and formed something larger, they had to bring together their story, so they had a common story once again. We're at the end of that process at the planetary level.
Mhm.
We're now bringing forth a story that is coming from every culture all around the planet. That's what's so thrilling. It's not coming from any one civilization. So autocosmology
Universal. Yeah. Truly universal.
is truly universal, truly universal. And at the same time, it's radically differentiated. So each of the journeys is unique. The journey to the common story through science is the same and different as the journey to the common story through art. And the
Be
richness,
in harmony. All these instruments, all these various voices can sing in harmony.
definitely.
Voices
That's the
create the
that,
yeah.
and that's what's so great about the Institute, because you're bringing them together, and we can hear about the various forms that are out there, and we just naturally harmonize. It just comes from some deep place in us. It's what the universe wants.
Yeah.
So the root. So after that long decades of work on my part to understand the facts and theories of the universe, it finally dawned on me that my whole life had been about telling the story of the universe out there.
Okay.
Even though I'd be saying, we're not separate, we're all interconnected. On some deep level, I was still thinking of the galaxy is out there, right? The birth of the universe is out there. And here, then it dawned on me that I was part of the universe too. I was evolving.
Her
And so if I
story
had to,
is your story. Yeah.
yeah, so then it wasn't so much, it wasn't at all that I wanted to tell my story as somehow separate from the universe. It was to tell the way in which the story itself had transformed me.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in a happy little home, and I went to St. Francis Cabrini grade school, Catholic, and, loved everything about it, and just sort of went about my day. And on Lent, I would give up candy. I would suffer, for the Lord. And I'm not making fun of these things. I'm saying that's how I was socialized, and I value all.
Dedicated to give up candy as a kid. You were dedicated.
Yeah, exactly. Then later in life, it was smoking. But at any rate, but as the universe entered into my thinking, I mean, I am just so different now. I think that was what I was hoping to do, was to show how the universe penetrated into me and transformed me, not in one blinding flash,
Right.
but a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, then kind of a flash, then a long period of nothing, then a little bit here. And so that, and my I say this explicitly in the book, my hope, my aim was by indicating how the universe as a whole entered into my life, I would activate similar memories from my readers. They'd be reading this and they'd say, well, I never studied mathematics, but I've had that kind of experience.
Exactly.
You see, so that the idea of, and I'm calling for writers and artists to give voice to their unique journey into this new way of being human. Because I think, like we were saying before, I think of it as we hear from one another, we will be strengthened in our faith in this whole vast evolutionary process.
Well, we learn so much from each other, and we find that to really grok our own worldview is such a sacred task and a life
Yes.
journey. And it's
Yes.
facing a few dark nights of the soul. You need to deconstruct, to reconstruct, you need to disassemble. It's a shamanic journey, right? A dismemberment, and then you are formed back together again. It's a
Yeah.
metaphorical journey. It really strikes you at your soul. You've got to face some big existential questions,
Yeah.
but it's a thrilling journey. It's a sacred journey, and it is more fun to do together. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So appreciate that. Well, tell us about some of the pivotal moments within that journey.
Okay. I'll tell you one. One was that you've already referred to, and this would be, I mean, I was thinking away, and this is when I was a young professor, and then I learned that the early Paleolithic humans were the same as we are anatomically and physiologically. And I didn't know that. I just sort of assumed that we were real short, early on, and we grew larger. I think that's true if you go back far enough. Obviously, the earliest humans were 4.5 feet tall. But I didn't get that by the time we got to Homo sapiens, they were just the same as we are, anatomically, physiologically, and brain size. If anything, the brain has shrunk a bit, but basically we're the same. And that I just started thinking about that, and what blew my mind was the idea that the only thing that separates me from them are these ideas. So I have an idea, like the idea of a telephone. We made a telephone, and the idea of democracy, and the idea of Einstein's theory of relativity. And so I was telling my wife Denise, I was saying, it's unbelievable. The only thing that separates us from the earliest humans is just a bag of ideas, just a bag of ideas. And I kept going on thinking about it, because in a certain sense, as a professor, I'm teaching ideas. And so I think I was looking for almost a justification of my life. So, wow, the only thing that separates us is ideas. I've got some ideas. I'm part of something important. Okay.
Did you find the
Denise
classroom
said,
to be a crucible and a focus group for you? To have this dialogue with your students was really a way to test these ideas and grow them? This is a good setting for you, I would think.
it was definitely, yes. From the very first day I began teaching, throughout my entire life, the teaching process was
A learning process.
mutual. It was a common search, and I wasn't aware of it so clear at the beginning, but it's become ever more clear. But at any rate, so I'm testing my theory out, not on students, but on my wife. And I said, wow, that's it, just a bag of ideas. And she said, for me, it's not that way at all. And she said, when I was pregnant, I was being changed, not by the idea of being pregnant or by the idea of being a mother. Everybody knows what that is, but it was the experience. The experience changed me. So see, in that moment, I think that was a step out of classical Western civilization with its high regard for ideas. And especially in the United States of America, where all, except for a tiny, tiny minority, all of the philosophy departments operate as if all that matters are these ideas. The analytic school, the Europeans aren't as limited as we are. But the point is, American civilization, which I love and admire, got stuck, and Western civilization got stuck in the idea of the mind with its ideas being superior to the body with its experiences. Now, I'm using these words in a simplistic way, but emotion is regarded as something that pulled us away from truth. You know, Immanuel Kant, Rene Descartes, the emotions of the body, Plato, you know, all the way back there, you have his image of the two horses. But so suddenly, the step of realizing, wow, my experiences, that's what matters. So then I realized it's not just enough for me to know the universe began billions of years ago, expanded, created stars, all the rest of it. That's important to know all of that.
Yeah.
But to actually feel it, to experience it directly, that's the crucial pathway that science is offering, and you know, like an elevated view of science.
And leading us to
So,
a path of wisdom, from
yeah.
knowledge to wisdom from that experience. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, very nice, Paul. Very nice. Exactly. Yeah. From knowledge, which is fantastic, really important.
Mhm.
You know, it comes out of wonder, like you pointed out early on. But to wisdom, that's something it's deeper, something that you can taste. And I don't want to suggest that I've arrived at wisdom, but I think it's a pathway that we are taking around the planet. Laura Lee.
I want to ask, so the role of science, I just want to ask, as a scientist, where do you see it? Because our early cultures valued much more than just the rational mind, which they had too, much more than just linear thinking. They were thinking with more muscles of the mind, right?
Mhm.
And it seems like did we have to go the role of science, where we now take everything into its little separate little bits, where we just really value the rational thinking? Was that a necessary development? Could there have been science in the context of the complete human capacity?
Well, that's the origin of science, isn't it? I mean, it was
To separate out was necessary, but it seems like what you're describing is now science is coming full circle now to when we tear apart the substructure of reality, we find there's no there. It's really, we are coming full circle, but we're coming to express through the leading edge of science what early societies knew all along in a different language, in a metaphorical language, it seems to me, because that wells up within us,
Mhm.
right? We've always been the transmitters, receivers for the universe to well up. So it's interesting that maybe science is a necessary tool to create this global connection where we can all talk with each other, to maybe
integrate.
fully be what's the role of science as a scientist, do you see, ultimately?
That's a big
In the
question.
who are we, where do we come from, where are we going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, it's a great question. I mean, what is the role of science? It's an awesome question. And I've thought about it my whole life. And I think just to begin the conversation, I think it helps to identify like the essence of modern science, and then to talk about science from a larger viewpoint.
Mhm.
So the science, the mechanistic science of the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, and it continues today for sure. But mechanistic science, we are aware, we're very aware of the negative aspects of mechanistic science now. I mean, I've already mentioned Rene Descartes. So his scientific approach was based on dualism, hugely. And then there's Isaac Newton. Isaac
The
Newton.
idea of the cold dead machine slowly running down.
Yes, there you go. Yes, that's the image we were given. a cold, dead machine slowly grinding to a halt.
Yeah.
So that's the part we want to criticize, and we need to remove and replace. But okay, now I want to talk about what science, even that science, gave us.
Yes, a lot of gifts. Yep.
Yeah, so that this I learned this in graduate school because I got to know people from other cultures, and I was talking to one of my friends from China, and he was saying that the difference between Chinese wisdom, and science is that science got to the idea of universal truth in a way that his own socialization in China did not. Universal truth. So the idea that Newton came up with equations that applied everywhere, like, wow, and I just want to say something great about the equations. When we first went to the moon, we went there with Newton.
Yeah.
Newton told us how to go to the moon.
Yeah.
We didn't need Einstein. None of that was needed. Niels Bohr, no. So the insight, Newton got to an amazing insight, and other scientists, that universal laws, it was dreamt about by people like Pythagoras.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
and
yeah.
Plato, very much so. They
Assumed
dreamt about
existed.
this.
He assumed they existed, but even Newton was looking at God's handiwork. It was a spiritual quest for Newton. We don't-
Absolutely, yes. He was so even though there are aspects we want to go beyond, that impulse,
Yeah.
the impulse that Newton had is not only did it lead to universal science, it is a universal impulse, the impulse to know the nature of where we are.
Mm.
So it's like this fantastic explosion of knowledge. There had never been anything like the knowledge of, just to get this, in the start of the 20th century, we didn't know if there was just one galaxy in the universe,
Right.
or if maybe there were two or three. Now we know there are 2 trillion. And just think this. Just the fact of thinking, okay, God created the world, 10,000 years ago. That sort of that kind of thinking was all around the planet. Just sort of like, okay, we're here. The gods in the past built us, and now we've discovered this incredible billion-year process. By the way, we don't understand evolution. Darwin had insights that are fantastic, but it's
Not
like
the whole story.
tiptoeing into the shallows of an ocean.
Well, what I really appreciate about what you're putting on the table, you and your colleagues, is that in matter itself, life is inevitable. The construct of matter
Mm.
is what gives life form when given the chance, right? When given enough complexity, and it's inevitable in evolution. That's what I so appreciate. So science has also found that to complete the creation story, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Layer after layer after layer. Look where we've come back to. Full circle is what I mean. Yeah.
Yes. And so all of that work, all that has brought an incredible amount of knowledge and facts. I have a story to tell you. It relates to this whole thing. I was talking to a biologist. This is at UCLA, and this happens to be the guy that discovered the most ancient fossil we have.
Ah.
He's the guy. So and like, wow, in Australia.
Single cell life? Yeah, single cells. Yeah.
Single cells. And so I was so amazed, and I said, wow, what was that like? What was that like when you found the oldest piece? And he looked at me in a strange way, and he didn't answer. And I said, when you looked, you must have been amazed by what you found. And what was that like? What was the emotions, And he stared back and he finally said, I wasn't feeling anything, nothing.
Mhm.
And I was like aghast.
Ah,
He said, you try staring in a microscope for 16 hours a day for 5 years and tell me what you're feeling.
Oh
Ah.
my gosh.
yeah.
Wow.
The point is, in other words, the scientist, he sacrificed his mind, his life in order to get to these facts.
Mhm.
But now we have them. And so we're called upon to understand them more deeply from a spiritual point of view, an artistic point of view, not just a factual point of view.
No, they
And
inform
once
the
again,
humanities as well.
all of the humanities. You see, so once again, that's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. And the science has been an absolute explosion of knowledge. And we happen to live in the time when it's transforming from its mechanistic phase,
Right.
to use Paul's word, to its wisdom phase.
Yeah. Right.
It's wisdom phase. And for the most part, this is not going to come from the scientists themselves. They've done their part.
Right.
Now it's up to the poets and the musicians,
But
the
it's got a
ritualists.
spiritual component built into it, because when you arrive at a place of awe and wonder, you're at grace. You're at the doorstep of grace.
Yeah.
Have to- Your mind transforms.
Well, I think
Your
that
heart.
and the imagery.
That's the meeting point that we're most interested in.
Think back a few months ago when we first saw the images coming in from the James Webb, we looked at those images and was like, pow, it was an external transcendence that happened. We were able to go beyond anything that we had possibly conceived in our brains previously in terms of understanding.
To behold that, and it looks like the inside of a cell, right? It looks like you're from the microcosm to the macrocosm in one view.
Right.
I mean, that's a stretch, isn't it? It's the stretch we need. That blows away a few boundaries.
So that's
right there.
that is that external meditation maybe that we need as human beings. And when we see this vast, unlimited universe, unbounded universe that surrounds us, gives us that opportunity to look at ourselves. And many of us maybe will never take up a practice of meditation or some sort of inner search. But when we look at the outside world through what science is bringing to us, there's another form of transcendence that was not available previously. So it's
the doorway within, or the doorway at the largest doorway out there, right?
So
you end up at the same place.
That's an exciting time. It's an exciting time.
Yeah.
And that would be Tony.
Yeah.
Jump in here.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Is
I have a couple of perspectives that are, I think, may be interesting. One is that scientists do have intuition, and I have a theory that where we put efforts in, we're rewarded by intuition. It doesn't mean that we have to follow an exact code, but sometimes we just know things.
Yeah.
And in strange ways. My first discovery, I was an undergraduate at the University of Pennsylvania, but I was working for a semester and a summer at MIT and Harvard at a new facility. There was an intractable problem. This magnificent new antenna called Haystack could not point. And they were doing Edisonian experiments, and I was paid to go and sit by the antenna and make measurement after measurement. After 2 months, I woke, and this was something that professors from MIT and Harvard could not figure out. After 2 months, I woke up one morning, I knew the answer. It was nothing like what they expected. And they almost fainted when I told them the answer. I immediately got computer programmers and all sorts of people to help me with that. And it was my first paper, still my most quoted paper. But this sort of came because of the effort and maybe some magic of a couple of things I'd experienced that the people at Harvard and MIT had not experienced.
Well, haven't
That's amazing. You did this as an undergraduate.
Yeah,
Wow.
I did. It was a little embarrassing that it's still my most quoted paper. But
why? God, I would let everybody know that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So you were like, were you actually a teenager?
Well, I wasn't. Yeah, I guess I was. I guess I was. It was maybe I was 20. I don't know, but it was. Yeah.
Long hair.
Well, you know, Newton's greatest work was in his early 20s. So, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, part of my point is that I think intuition comes to scientists, and I think that many, all the good ones listen to that. We
Yeah.
don't go out and say, "Oh, I have the impression this is true," and publish a paper on it. We have to go through the filter of the scientific method. But I think not only poets, musicians, philosophers, etc., have insight, scientists do. And I wanted to make it clear that there's something really important there in so many ways, in so many great questions that are being asked. I mean, there are people like Sean Carroll are really looking at the origin of the universe in totally different ways. And of course, Brian is here. I'm all for it. Let's, and we just need to be open to this. As I say, I think there are multiple ways of knowing. One of them is study and intuition. One of them is things just come to us sometimes. And another way is if we have an antenna out, if we observe what happens when we walk, think, explore, read, if we observe what's happening inside us, there is insight that comes from that.
We're in
Beautiful.
dialogue with the universe all the time. Can we listen?
Yeah, and
Well,
Brian,
thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, that's great, Tony. That's terrific.
not an
Great
interruption.
story.
I wanted to say that a scientist isn't this cold machine that operates on the railroad tracks. We operate pretty broadly.
Especially
Yeah,
folks that are
exactly.
also mystics,
well,
right?
you know,
Yeah.
you bring up the best questions of all, Tony, and you continue to remind us that we can't keep having this separation between the concept of science and that of the human story exploring itself. We call it mysticism. We call it, something else beyond. But ultimately, it's when we bring those worlds together where we have the greatest discoveries. And even those of us that are not scientists maybe sometimes express judgment, prejudice towards science, and not realizing that separation is stopping the very thing that we most want to have, and that's that connection to all of life. So
that is our drive, isn't it?
yeah,
And
and
to
that's the
explore.
foundation of our institute with Dr.
Yeah.
Goodman and her exploration
Yeah.
of taking it on the chin, being someone who's got the credentials, being an anthropologist, to also say
And a female. Wow.
and being a female, we need to understand the world of direct experience, and we can't discount that. That's science as well.
Well, I consider it another form of exploration. Look, we're the species that colonize the globe, right? Not many species do that. We're explorers, we invent,
Right.
and we want to have a glimpse of further and farther.
Yeah.
And science helps us do that.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being one of those scientists that are doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, do you want to take some more comments, questions? What do you want to do next?
Monica.
Oh yeah, got to have Monica. Absolutely.
Well, first, I just wanted to say something about science. I had another comment I wanted to make, but it's hard to resist. Science is exploring the external relations between things that are universal and general and complete, and can be assessed. And in some sense, it's like if that is done with a depth of interior and in a loving way and in a way that recognizes the limitations of science, then it's the best tool we have, the best way we have of exploring. But so I love science and the kinds of things that it can reveal that aren't obvious unless you go with the science and make the observations. And
yeah.
But when when you said a while back that you had this pivotal moment where you realized that you were what you're saying in some senses that you were the universing, and you could recognize that depth in yourself. It's sort of one thing to look out and say, I am the stars. But along with this perspective, I just wanted to emphasize that the reason that these kinds of thoughts were coming from you is that consciousness itself is evolving, and you're you are beginning to see the world with a time developing consciousness. And it's a very distinct way of seeing the world, to recognize, to say that you are the universing is to recognize in the presence of yourself and also every other entity a time column that goes back to origin, such that you are that background radiation. Mm-hmm. When CNN and William Shatner are talking about on a show on CNN, and they're looking out at the background radiation of the earliest pictures of the universe. I think Anderson Cooper is saying to William Shatner, well, where is it now? And I jump up and I'm like,
it's right here. Yeah.
I mean, you are that. That's where it is right now, and it's like it takes a bit to get to that, to recognize the presence of that time column in everything. And also at the same time, the relationality, that like reality is relationality, because I am interacting with all, I'm a perspective on the story, just like everything else is a perspective on the story. We don't have the whole story. We can only, so it's not just suddenly thinking I am the star and I'm connected to everything. There's an entire body of science and literature that an entire body of science that supports this idea, so that we're brought back to something similar to what you're saying, Laura Lee, with the pan-vitalism of old. Mm-hmm. But in an entirely new way.
An entirely new way.
It's not going back.
Firing. Yeah.
There's an irreversibility to it that, that past is. So that was the comment I wanted to make, is that it's recognizing, it's pointing to a completely different way of being in the world.
And that's a direct experience. Yes, I and the universing is a direct experience.
Yeah.
Yes, Brian.
Yeah. Just to say that, Monica, what you've just said is another way of responding to Laura Lee's question of what is the role of science? What is the role of science? Yeah. And I just wanted to say, so picking up on what Monica said, we can say this: the role of science enables us to get in touch with the nature of reality. It's one way. It's a way. And so, for instance, to go back to the start of science, Galileo, enabled us with the telescope, enabled us to get in touch with the moons going around Jupiter, and to see that. So science it extended our sensory capacity.
Yeah. Yep.
And it provided a theoretical interpretation of this extension. So it's not just that we are able to see the Jupiter and the moons. We realize the moons are going around Jupiter and Jupiter's going around the sun. Okay, so then now let's go to what Monica just said. And this goes back to what you were saying, Paul, about looking at the images from the James Webb. So let me just start over and say that. So with science and technology has built this capacity, all right, to take in these images, but it also provides us with an interpretation of the images, mm-hmm. and namely that these are the clouds that are forming into stars that are giving birth to the elements that form our body. So when we look
claim
out,
the stars as our ancestors, direct ancestors. We become
yes,
a cosmological being. We do that.
Direct ancestors. And so, but when we take in the images of the web, we are experiencing ourselves as
Mhm.
that which we are viewing,
Mhm.
reflecting upon itself.
I also
So
think
I just want,
embodied spirituality is easier when we understand that matter is inherently patterned for life, right? For when we understand the true nature of matter, we can
and
embody it in
absolutely
our
pattern for
cosmology.
life.
We need to ground ourselves and appreciate the planet we're on, to appreciate our bodies, to appreciate their capacity too. That's what's also
Absolutely.
exciting to me about what you're delivering.
So that there's a latent capacity for life in matter.
Yeah.
Mm.
And another way of interpreting what Monica was saying is that there's a latent capacity in the universe for conscious self-awareness.
Mhm. We are eyes and ears of the universe. The universe sees through
Yes.
us. Yeah.
Yes. So it's the universe itself
Mhm.
that is reflecting upon itself.
Mm.
And I bring this up because that's a major
Mhm.
change in how we understand our own experience. And we're looking out, but we're not just looking out. By looking out, we're looking within.
Yeah.
You see, we've
You give us all the
transcended that
language we
dualism.
need to justify our own experiences in our work. You've just
Right.
given us the language, confirming our language, our mythopoetic language.
Yay!
You're reflecting
Yay!
it back to us, and we go, look at Brian Swimme. He's a scientist. Scientists are saying this. We're saying it in our way. He's saying it in this. It's the same thing, you know.
Good.
So
The wrong
we
guy.
I agree.
appreciate, yeah, what you guys are doing.
Monica?
One more thing, and
Yeah.
that is, we've talked a lot here about, science and, speaking about just like the role of science, but, science as this, as a materialistic, reductionistic, type of science that is characterized the past few centuries, and our religion of old have a lot in common. Both of them see the universe itself as dead, matter as dead. Both of them, like Tillich would say, it's an ontology of death. So we have the human psyche now living in the smallest little place with some conduit via soul, for those who believe in God, some conduit that, we can get to this eternal life afterwards. That is what most of our religions are characterized by today.
Yeah.
Neither one of them have any sense of a time developing creative universe where the creativity is emerging in the moment in the depth of the relationships between all entities. And if we have that kind of an anticipatory view of a future that's pressing in, where the universe is about something, then we have a place. Then we cannot differentiate between, matter, life, everywhere else. It's one big story. And
That's what we keep getting up in our work. It's like life, death, and rebirth. That's a promise. You will take another form, but you will continue on in some form. And I also think it's so interesting that we've gone from the Matrix as like the popular sci-fi movie that blows your mind to what's the Avatar, where it's like, oh, the planet herself is going to reabsorb your consciousness and you'll live again. I mean, it's interesting that these movies that are telling us some deep truth, like you mentioned, fiction, is we're embracing those stories.
Mm-hmm.
They tell us something about the nature of reality, these new ideas that we're playing with.
Yeah.
That are popularized. They're telling us some deep truths. So
Monica's
think
going to come back and have a full discussion with Brian and us back in September. So please come back and
we look forward to that,
Yeah.
Monica. Thank you.
we love
you.
Monica.
She's co-written the story of the noosphere with Brian. So
Yeah.
she's so familiar with all these principles. And
Yeah. I'm so
we'll
fortunate.
dive into these and show a few clips. Yeah.
Not only as a guest,
gonna
but
be
as a
fun.
friend, we're excited.
Yeah.
So good.
Thank you, Monica.
I'm going to also ask Tyler Volk to join us.
Brian, you were with Tyler when he was our guest. I think this is lovely that he's here.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, that was a great presentation.
And
Yeah.
hi, Tyler. Your work in Cosmogenesis really relates right here to this inherent structure of matter and patterns of the universe to create us in the complexity we are. Yeah, welcome back.
Your comments, Tyler.
Okay, well, I've been loving the conversation, I have to say. What you're all bringing up just triggers so many thoughts and really important ideas. So Brian, I think I'd like to engage a bit on the concept of sequences of emergences or sequences of steps. Because the universe it's a continuum. It's a story that has a continuum to it, but there's also been, let's say, chapters in some way. Of course, when you write your books, you well, unless one's writing a book without chapters, but one tends to put things into chapters. So you had one on the animal, for example, and what's embodied with these different steps. So I'd like to maybe discuss with you a bit. Because this idea really intrigues me. I've been writing about it and thinking about it. What does it mean that it's not a river flowing that's continuous, right? There's stages or steps, and how you see that, because in some sense that itself becomes a pattern to admire, I would suggest.
Syncopation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I wonder if
Tyler, that's great. Could you give us a sense of how you see it, and then I could respond to that?
Well, yeah. So in this idea I wrote about in my Quarks to Culture book, in that one can start with the smallest fundamental particles and derive a series of steps by asking what things and relations combined to form a larger thing with new relations that then can interact and combine to form a next larger thing with new relations. And you get a series of things and relations or systems and relations that could not have skipped steps.
Yeah.
I see.
So to go from atoms to molecules to something that would be chemical reactions, somewhat imitating life, or let's say a prokaryotic cell, could not have gotten there through the interactions of atoms, but got there through the interactions of molecules.
Layers
and then
of complexity and relations.
Complexity that build up in a nested kind of a building up of a nested complexification, in which key is that there are new relations in the new larger entities. And so to continue, the prokaryotic cells, we know different prokaryotic cells combine to form the eukaryotic cell, which builds our bodies, the plant bodies, fungal bodies, complex multicellularity. It's not fully understood yet, as far as I can tell in the biology, exactly what the new relations were of the eukaryotic cell, but it has something to do with the ability to, because they've had exons and introns in their genomes, to be able to turn on and off genes to make multicellularity. And prokaryotes, bacteria do explore multicellularity in some of their reproductive phases of certain species, but not an obligated multicellularity, not what some people call a complex multicellularity, where to go through the life cycle, you need multicellularity. And once you have multicellularity in the animal sequence, you can have animal societies. And then that builds into human metasocial structures, where you get bands related to each other in larger tribal systems. And so with this is one logic. I'm not claiming this is obviously the only logic, but it was a logic that I was able to say, I'll start with this logic. I see that there's combinations and integrations happening in physics, chemistry, happening in biology, and happening in culture. And can one look at sequence steps or arrivals in new levels of combination and integration in a sequence?
And seeing that, I guess I love all your work. I think it's actually how I think as well, not without your detail, but it is, I guess, the way in which we have focused on that sequence, Tyler, is to imagine and affirm as much as we can the emergence of a new entity, which, you know, Teilhard de Chardin called the noosphere, and the you know, this power of complex units coming together to give birth to an even greater complex entity. The word we use was synergy as a way of talking about it. But, you know, Monica and I talked about this a lot. Monica, did you have a response?
The sequences of synergy or something like that. Or do you,
Yeah.
somewhat in that regard, maybe not again not in the same detail, but there's a sort of a development.
General question that we can all follow along. And what I'm getting from what you're saying, Tyler, is that, hey, it took 14 billion years to get to this stage. This is nothing we should take for granted. We are privileged to be here at this moment. I mean, there's a huge responsibility on us. Look what the universe, look what she did and how long it took. So,
Right.
I would just say that if we start with the parts and we try to build up from the parts to get to the next level up, we won't be able to do it. That in some sense, we have to truly understand this as a story. And it's read by different entities at different times. So if you really want to understand the meaning of oxygen, for example, you have to wait to find out what ultimately happens with oxygen at all different levels into the future. So the future, in some sense, will determine the meaning of everything that is developing. So, you know, if we're talking about, you know,
maybe the laws of physics aren't fixed yet. Maybe they evolve as well. Is that what you're implying?
Well, I think they do, but I think they are just habits laid down by the early universe, and that would be supported by
a very different situation to now.
But they're pretty darn steady.
Yeah,
they're pretty, you know, they're holding steady. Everything at these lower levels is holding steady, waiting to see what's going to develop next.
Well, that's why it's sort of a ladder. I mean, cultures that have, I mean, many creation stories do have sequences, right? I once had a class I was running seminar class on meta patterns. We were trying to apply some meta patterns to the to creation stories around. It didn't reach a technical paper level, but but the idea of the Aztecs have the suns, and the Bible, of course, has steps, and the yugas of so many creation stories do have chapters in them. That's pretty interesting there. It shows it transcends, it's something deep in maybe the human way of thinking. I think the science
that back, Tyler, and we'll dissect this more. Come on back. This is like a bigger
we need Tyler
story.
back.
You're welcome. Come on,
it's great stuff, Tyler.
One more quick little response to that, please, is like, in my sense, that in my thinking, that these sequences that happen are about the things that can and want to happen now. They can't happen at any other time.
Thank you.
I mean, there was a time when star formation.
We're not in charge. There's a large
humans are developing where life is coming forth.
Yeah, Monica, and that was true with the origin of life and the eukaryotic cell. I mean, there were okay.
That's great, Tyler. Great to hear from you.
Thank you, Tyler. And of course,
Brian Tucker was waiting.
Talks with us.
Oh yeah,
we're meta patterns and all of that on YouTube. So beautiful.
And yes, there's no paper yet, Tyler, but meta patterns on creation stories. That's our
forte.
We
want to hear this.
We want to hear that
take
story.
us to the humanities and see how it plays out.
Let's do that.
You're always welcome.
We'll help you with that.
You dissect that.
This is
our anthropology team on that as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Christine Van Poel will want to be, and Todd.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay, listen, Brian Tucker is next.
Great. Yeah, I'm appreciating this conversation so much. And Brian and Monica, I want to reflect for a moment on the contribution that this work has made to the world and to our lives spiritually. It's enriched so much of what our experience is these days. It's given us some new ways of looking at the world. I appreciate the generosity in Cosmogenesis of you sharing your interior journey, Brian, and especially how you've given voice to some of your internal dreams. I remember in particular a place in the book that you describe your experience at the King Tut Museum, looking at an artifact and being triggered in a sense, in a moment, by a zigzag pattern. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of questions that came up in the chat. Matthew Switzer, for example, said he would love to hear you talk about dreams. Thomas Berry's dream, Matthew Fox's dream, your dreams in Cosmogenesis, and the dreams in the universe story. Anything mathematical cosmology can teach us about dreams. And Nick Brink had also mentioned about the importance of our ecstatic trance experience. So it just reminded me again about in your book on Cosmogenesis, you were very generous sharing with us some of those moments that have helped to break you open and the importance of that mythopoetic way of encountering the world. So I just wanted to, give you that opportunity to speak on that.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you. I wish I had something. Matthew Switzer, Matthew, you're great. You've asked me several times about dreams, and I always feel so inadequate. I should know about dreams because I've been dreaming now for my whole life, but I really don't. I don't have any deep insights that would help you, unfortunately. I mean, just in a general sense, just to give you my personal orientation here, and I'm not saying this is worth anybody's time, but just to answer your question, it's like when Monica was saying, and like Tyler was saying, Tyler was talking about the sequence that has to be gone through. I mean, that's really fascinating. It's a certain sequence.
Yeah.
And so then the question is it the only sequence? Probably not. Maybe there are multiple sequences. But then another question is this: does the universe know the sequence?
In advance or as it unfolds?
In advance. I go back 14 billion years. Did the universe know the sequence from prokaryotes to eukaryotes? Now then, I don't think we can answer that in a way that makes everybody happy. It's an important question. I can only give you my personal orientation. And that is that the universe has preferences.
Mm-hmm.
The universe, among the various possibilities in any one moment, there are preferences. And like Monica was saying, certain things are possible now that were not possible in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Because complexity has arrived at a point when these things can come forth. So now here we get to my thing on dreams. I think dreams are the way in which the sea of potentiality that is everywhere in the universe, the sea of potentiality is calling to us.
Yeah.
That's what I think about dreams, and they're enigmatic because the future is unprethinkable.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Like
Friedrich
the
Schelling's
mysteries
great
have to
word.
remain the mysteries, right? They'll unfold in their own accord.
They'll unfold in their own accord. Yes,
Yeah.
But they're so desperate to come forth. They press into our evening, our sleep. They press in, and they fascinate us, and we build our lives out of our responses to our dreams, for sure. What was the second one, Brian?
Describe our work as a state of a waking dream.
Right.
Beta plus theta, and you can measure it in the lab. A waking dream. That seems to me like you're opening up the bandwidth to engage.
Right.
Yeah.
On that
Yeah.
one.
It was just that point, like that second question was more about that waking dream that can happen in some unguarded moments. And I almost got in reading Cosmogenesis that has happened to you multiple times in your life. It's like these epiphanies. And maybe
Spontaneous.
these geometric designs, or maybe some kind of thing you're hearing or staring up in the night sky, but it elicits almost like a waking knowledge, a waking intuitive. It's kind of what Tony's referring to, that intuition has come alive for you. But that has been such a shining light, I think, in the work that you do. I just wondered if you could
can
relate to
taste
that.
it and feel it, Brian.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks, Brian. Yeah, dreams have been really important to me personally, even though I'm not a, dream therapist or anything else like that. But it was a dream that broke finally my life apart when I was teaching at University of Puget Sound, and that dream I did include in the book as an example of how we are guided by dreams. And I think that I remember, I agree with you completely. The phrase "waking dream," I love that phrase. I think that's so true. And I never had that phrase in my mind until I met Thomas Berry.
Okay.
I was asking him, like Matthew is asking me, I was asking him about dreams, right? And I was saying, what goes on in dreams, and what, how do you understand them, and things like that. And he just looked at me and said, I was talking about nighttime and all the rest, and he goes, I feel like I'm dreaming both day and night.
There he goes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so then I just thought, that's fantastic. That explains my whole life. I'm just, it's always a dream.
Well, and that's that non-linear thinking combined with the linear thinking, right? Just open your bed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We have that capacity built in. It's part of our inner
Yes.
technology. It's part of our toolkit. Let's use
Yeah.
it.
Both. Yeah.
And I think some of
Yeah.
the greatest discoveries in science throughout history,
Yeah.
there has to be that element of going beyond
Pull it down from
just the
ethers.
intellect. There's something
Yeah. Pull it
powerful
down from
about,
within.
that powerful of that
Mhm.
dreamlike state you're talking about, that waking dream state. I just recently went back to one of our previous interviews we'd done in the past and doing some editing for a podcast. And it was about the life of Nikola Tesla. I mean, this gentleman's brain, what he was able to accomplish, being the man who invented electricity and all of the incredible discoveries that he did as
Didn't
a
invent
mathematician.
electricity.
Yes, he did.
No, I'm not going to argue. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'm going to argue my own life. We'll talk about it later.
He had many inventions, though.
Well, okay.
And he could see them and he could visualize them operating and
So
through time.
yeah. So my point being is that he was one of those people that could not manage his personal life very well, lost everything he ever created, but so that part of his brain wasn't functioning so well. But his ability to tap into this field of knowledge and bring it out and exercise to
practical
us
ways.
what the human experience can do, what the
Yeah.
human brain and beyond can accomplish, was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. That's great, Paul.
Yeah.
Paul, I have something to add or a question. In terms of dreams, and in terms of science, science really, until quite recently, has really depended upon the five senses: smell, touch, sight,
Right.
each of the five sentences. And recently, with modern physics and quantum physics, has taken us beyond that. But when we look at dreams, or what the Institute is about, is static trance, these come from the hunter and gatherer era. During the hunter and gatherer era, dreams and ecstatic trance were very central in terms of giving direction to life.
Mhm.
Then along came science, which really limited things by depending upon the five senses.
Yeah.
I think this really connects. I think going into this new age where we're going now, the whole new world is opening up, that we're reconnecting with our hunter and gatherers. We are really reconnecting with this knowledge that comes to us from beyond our senses.
Good point, Nick.
Oh, just one other point. I think the hunter and gatherers were much more matriarchal. I think when we came into the patriarchal era, that's when science really became very controlling and trying to give direction. So
Yeah, thank you,
Yes,
Nick.
yes, absolutely, Nick. I think that the knowledge that, like Tony was talking about, is it wasn't based on senses. He simply knew. He simply knew. Intuition. So I think that's and it's not just Tony's own experience, but among scientists in general. You know, the famous quote from Einstein that imagination is more important than knowledge.
yes,
So like imagination, we have an image of something that's not our senses. Going back to what we talked about in dreams, that, I mean, dreams, you can say you're having an inner sensual experience, but it's not your eyes looking at something. And so I think dreams, another example of a kind of knowing that's different than the scientific empirical method.
Well, as Monica was saying, what science explores our external world, spirituality explores our internal world. And I think our spiritual selves have another set of tools, another set of inner senses to navigate by.
Mhm.
And so we need both of those, do we not?
Yeah,
We need all the tools in our tool belt to navigate this very difficult road ahead.
right.
I'm excited to live in this age because we can know so much, because
Yeah.
we can know so much about our past. We can dream about our future.
Yeah.
We can know on a global scale. We can communicate. Here we are across the world talking to one another. How exciting is that? Our
Yeah.
world is opening up. I mean, we are truly opening up our bandwidth, and
Yes.
it's thrilling, but it
Yeah.
comes with so much responsibility and
It
so
does.
much. We've got all this potential. Let's use it. Let's use it well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Amen, sister. Amen.
in a static trance, that really connects us to this new reality and brings us into the future.
Well,
Yeah.
it looks to us like that capacity
Mhm.
to enter into the state of the waking dream and all that it can deliver has been with us, built into our DNA
Right.
from what, at least 40,000 years ago
Yeah.
Yeah.
and more. We see the evidence for that. And so that's been an important survival mechanism for humanity all this time. Again, let's put all the tools on the table and let's utilize them. Let's embrace who we fully are.
Right.
And plus it's delicious and fun. So why the heck
Yeah.
not?
'Cause-
Delivering the
Thank you.
same lessons, Brian, that
Yeah.
you have been discovering from your,
I
you've been
completely
downloading.
agree. Completely agree. Yeah.
It's time is now. It's like the universe is broadcasting it. Hey, on all channels, put out your antenna, transmitters and receivers, open up. We got something to tell you to help you navigate and create the
Yeah.
world we all want.
Yeah.
So we have no excuses, really. Thank you, Nick.
Nick. Yes.
Appreciate that.
I was going to go to
Yeah.
Christine Van Poel, who's an anthropologist and
Oh, yeah,
and
what'd she
professor
say?
at the University of Missouri.
And Chris has been looking at the shamanic cultures and seeing their cosmologies, looking at what they've been saying and recording.
Yeah.
And
Hello,
Cool.
Chris.
also one of our advisors. Hi there.
My time. Good morning. This has been a wonderful and delightful discussion, Brian. I super appreciate it. I would say it's
Oh, thanks.
enchanting. Everyone, for years I've been talking about your research here on Cuyamanger. So you've been a behind the scenes celebrity.
Yeah.
And I can really see why so many people are responding so wonderfully to you, both your work, but also you as an individual. Thank you so much. I'm really enjoying this. It's given me lots of food for thought. And Paul asked if I had any comments. I was like, well, I'm sure. I would just say that I think your work is really fascinating, and there's a lot of synergy that could be done, that we could think about a lot of different topics within the field of anthropology, but also with Cuyamanger. And I think that you're right. We have a big dialogue ahead of us.
Yeah. Fun.
From the strong chord scientists to the artists, and the sciences and humanities really do need to be brought back together
Yeah.
and dealt with. I think that would be really important. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited about that type of research, and that's exactly what Cuyamanger has been doing for a very long time. And so I have lots of questions that would probably be better over another conversation sometime, but I really
Let's go
enjoyed
in the
it.
Good,
chat room.
good. I look forward to all of that, Chris.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
In the
Laura.
chat, hold on. In the chat room, you say many shamans believe that we go deep into ourselves so we can travel far out in the universe.
Right.
Inner cosmos. Yes, that's totally our experience. Do you want to talk about that from an anthropological point of view for a moment?
I'm sure a lot of shamans will have during their trance often report tunneling and spiraling deep into their navel into their I think it's the second brain. Neuroscientists are finding that the gut really is the second brain, but they go deep into the gut, deep into that thing, then to fly out to the cosmos. So I think that that's a really important thing that shamans of old understood, that to really understand the cosmos, you had to go deep within yourself, that deep within yourself led your journey into the cosmos, and to understand the cosmos, you had to be really connected and deep into yourself. And I would say probably the guts, the second neurons were all kinds of serotonins produced in the gut. There's all kinds of interesting things going on that I think neuroscientists with looking at our entire physiology will be coming out in the next, I'm going to guess.
That's why she wants to take us back to the lab, because she's seen this over and over and over again.
Yeah, and that's something that
Yeah.
Todd, my husband, and I are working on, is trying to go into the EEG labs and the other labs at the University of Missouri. We have a brain lab facility here at Mizzou, and we have other stuff. We have a lot of resources here at Mizzou that we're wanting to work with Cuyamonga and other people that are working with Cuyamonga to really pull on this thing from multiple directions. Absolutely.
Which makes sense, because if the universe designed us,
Yes.
then we would find it. I mean,
Within
you can't
ourselves.
go anywhere without it being there.
Yeah.
So many directions. It's like all
Absolutely.
roads lead to the cosmos, right?
Absolutely.
So
You know, this is-
exciting.
It is exciting. This is actually, I think, something that Felicitas Goodman, who found this institute, really understood in a way that I think we're just beginning to catch up with her. I'm really slow. I'm a good many years behind her, but I think she understood this type of research as well, and understood these deep truths that we're starting to recognize.
You're
as
too
well.
humble,
Right.
Chris. You're helping us push it forward.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't know if
Very
I'm
cool.
helping. I feel like I'm kind of tiptoeing behind Felicitas, slowly tiptoeing and kind of coming around. But yes, that's where I feel like I'm at right now.
You're coming
Lovely.
full circle in so many ways. And
Yeah,
so
maybe that's it. The full circle. I mentioned something about Aztecs. Sometimes it's really hard to reinvent a wheel. Once a wheel is rolling, it seems like it keeps rolling. And so sometimes I feel like
Those
we're in
momentum.
cycles. And I agree with everything you said. You have to have the smaller pieces building linearly, but they do seem to roll and circle back in these cycles, and those come really increasingly important.
will you
I think.
come back with Tyler and we can say, here's those principles. Let's see how
Yes.
they play out in culture.
Yes.
It's an important conversation to have.
Create
With
some
my
story.
husband,
Yeah.
Todd, because he's also, I think, a pretty brilliant anthropologist, if I may say so. So
Well,
my
when we
husband
say you, we mean you and
Yeah.
Todd.
Yeah,
Well,
the you.
You're like Paul and I, you come
You.
together as a pair of
Exactly.
set.
You identify as the you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Again, Brian, thank you. A million thanks. I have new ideas that I want to explore and maybe talk with
Yeah.
you later
Good.
if you have the time. So thank
I
you.
look
so
forward
much.
to it, Chris.
And thanks, Laura and Paul and Monica and the other Brian Tucker. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Listen, I mean, we are so incredibly blessed to have advisors like Christine and Tony and all that have come to
And
the
Brian,
and
Tucker.
Brian Tucker, who have come to
Yeah.
the table and say, let me help you guys take this to the next level. You need some help. We're going to bring you
It's a
some
village.
we're going to bring you some
Yeah.
scholarship to make it all happen. And yeah, exactly. So that's fantastic.
We have Shoshana.
Yeah, Shoshana, I think she had texted me. She had a piece of artwork that was based on this, and she said she sent me an email, but I can't get it to open.
I see it.
Well,
Yeah.
You're beautiful.
it's a piece of a larger painting called Sister Sky. And I had the idea for it in 1981. I don't know quite what sparked the idea, the image, which is another thing I want to say right up front. Images, artists, they don't think in images, they image.
Yeah.
And so they are processing all this information and turning it into images and patterns, which is what we've been talking about all this time. And I would love to see more modern art, contemporary artists on this discussion, because they're out there And I know I'm going to a conference in December about the Gaia theory. And
Oh.
I'm sure there might be an art show there around artists who are thinking about Gaia theory.
Well, the symbolic language has been our earliest cultural container for all of this. And I think
Right.
we take in symbol in a direct way. I think it's
Right.
more deeply embedded in us than written and
So,
spoken
I would like
language.
to see more
So, yes.
contemporary art that expresses the same thing. Now, this
Of
painting,
course.
okay, it started off with this figure of the overarching
Oh,
goddess,
nuts.
the ancient Egyptian goddess of the sky, and she's arching over the sea. But there's a woman astronomer in a Renaissance garb with a telescope in her hand, which represents Galileo, or the era of Galileo. And I read that Galileo's daughter became a nun whose name was Suor Celeste, or Sister Sky. So this painting, this is named after Galileo's daughter. So there's all these connections with history, culture, myth. And she's standing there looking at, what she's looking at is Saturn, you see, with the rings.
Yeah.
But what you don't see above the figure of Nut is the Webb telescope, which I added in this year when I did the same image in pastels. So what you're looking at is a pastel painting. I met Natalie Battaglia, who's an astronomer. She teaches at UC Santa Cruz. She was involved with the Kepler project. Part of this painting, when I redid it, was inspired by meeting her. But the impact of the picture, you know, has its own impact, and that's at the emotional level.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I was telling my friend David Deemer, who's an origin of life scientist, that, you know, I'm really interested in creating a feeling of awe in the spectator. It's not so much just the scientific information, but it's the feeling of awe when you look at the sky and you feel that feeling, and you can't just put it in words. Maybe great poets can, but I know when we get to words that end in ity, like potentiality or spirituality, we have moved away from that core experience.
Our personal relationship.
Interesting word.
Yeah.
I mean, such a good point. The
Yeah.
symbolic language. Yeah. Do you want to speak to that, Brian? You say that's
I would just, yeah, I do.
step in our development.
Thank you.
Just to ask a question. Are you familiar with Shoshana? Are you familiar with Hildegard's work?
Hildegard,
Oh.
yes, I am. And, you know, she also was, she had an intellect that spanned the sciences of her day with medicine and herbal, well, medicine, maybe I know her as a healer, and her mystical experiences, which she had since she was a child.
Yeah.
And her artwork and her music. I mean, she was phenomenal, you know, just absolutely.
Absolutely
Noma
phenomenal. She
also.
she figures in the book I just wrote, Cosmogenesis, and I thought, wow, this reminds me of her images.
Yes.
I mean, yours are you're unique in your own, but you know, I'm so moved by her work.
Yes.
And going into her story, she became profoundly sick, and looking back on it, people think that she went into despair, and her way out of the despair was creating art. That's why there's so many young people in despair, and because we've taken away the humanities from them in our educational process.
Yes.
And so they end up in prison.
Yep.
But you know, this whole idea of giving expression to what we're experiencing is a way to health.
Right.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Good.
So thank you for that. You mentioned you're going to a Gaia conference. So can you speak, Brian, to that wonderful idea of Gaia as a self-regulating entity? and how
Thank you,
that
Shoshana.
fits into a regenerative, self-regulating universe. How even it's a miracle that all the tiny degrees of whatever brought us together to be a universe, that it didn't just fly apart. You address that as well.
Yeah,
Ridiculous we're even here.
that's one of the most powerful ideas that we have from the world of science. This idea of self-regulation. And just maybe tying it back into our conversation with Tyler's work, it is I find it thrilling that that if you look at the early universe, it's plasma, it's elementary particles, and yet it already knew. You have to put quotation marks around the word "knew."
Yeah.
It knew how to create galaxies. I mean, it's not a knowing that there's like a human consciousness knowing something.
No outside agents needed. It was an internal, inherent job.
Yes, exactly. Entirely internal, but it's this way, and we've talked a lot about this, like other ways of knowing, right? We talk about science and art and so forth. Well, there's yet another way. The universe knew how to create galaxies.
Wow.
And it couldn't just create galaxies. It had to go through a series of steps.
Yeah.
The first thing that had to happen was that the matter had to be stabilized. It was flashing in and out of existence early on,
Oh, wow.
and then it stabilized. And then atoms had to be created. Then it had to spread out, and so forth. My point is that we've lived. The science is great, but some of the interpretations are horrible. And the interpretation that I'm criticizing here is the idea that the universe began as inert matter. And this goes back to the point that Laura, you've emphasized too.
Dead matter, inert matter.
Dead,
Saying,
inert.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but it was matter that knew things in a different way of knowing. And you see, what one of the problems we have
Love this.
is
Wow.
that we regard our way of knowing as the ultimate supreme way of knowing. So that we're conscious, we have theories and all the rest of it. But it's important to realize that we're turning everything upside down. The matter here, let me make a rhetorical statement. The matter of the primordial fireball is more intelligent than we are.
Yes. I can get that. Yeah.
And now, Shoshana, going back to you with the art, you know, I just made a statement in words, but we have to feel it. We have to find a way with art and with fiction and with ritual and with ecstatic trance. We need to find ways so we feel the truth. So let me give you just one little bit of where I started to get this feeling. So I am in grad school, and I'm taking a course on the evolution of galaxies. Very, very complex, extremely complex. Galaxies aren't just a big lump of matter. They're as complex as a cell. So we're doing all this mathematics and we're learning all this stuff, and it's all great. Then at one point, the professor stops and he says this: we don't fully know how the galaxies evolved. We're hoping to. With some theories we have, we'll test them out, but we don't fully know. And then it hit me, really just like a massive ecstatic trance that
Yeah.
the primordial matter of the early universe knew how to create galaxies. We don't know how they did it. So who's the intelligent one here? The primordial fireball that knows how to create galaxies, or the humans that are still trying to figure out how it happened? You see, so it's a profound reversal.
Mhm.
And so I'm saying then that the galaxies knew, the primordial matter knew how to create galaxies and knew how to create a self-organizing planet, Gaia.
Mhm.
All of this was there in the sea
Mhm.
of potency. See, so Sean, I didn't use ITY that time. I shifted from potentiality to potency.
Poetry next. Here comes the poetry.
All right, we need
A
all the
little step
voices, right,
forward.
to sing this symphony. But it is so remarkable that on a like little corner of a galaxy, and a little tiny blue speck, little tiny dot could see so far.
Yeah,
That is not from us. We're just a conduit. That is
Yeah.
something else coming through us, universing through us, right? But even you point out the arms of our galaxy is a wave. I did not know that.
yeah.
Explain that one. It's not matter. It's a wave. It's almost like a cymatics pattern, right? With energy, or moving the particles. What is it? Explain that, please. Because that's beautiful. That's a dance. It's a slow
Well, first
dance.
of all, Lori Lee, where did you learn that?
From your book, I think.
I know, but which book?
Oh,
Cosmogenesis, I read it. Yeah,
Is it in there?
I think so. Yeah.
Monica, is it in there?
I don't think so, but
Well,
it's
it was somewhere.
definitely,
Yeah,
it's somewhere.
See, I don't think it's there. That's why I'm just kind of impressed.
Yeah.
You've read
Yeah.
more than one of my books. I'm
course.
overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we've known you for 30 years or so.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so anyway, getting back to your point, when we first saw galaxies, in the 1920s,
Yeah.
They look like pinwheels. So we have the galactic arms, and everyone looked at it and go, "Wow, it's like one of those little things you spin, pinwheels."
Yeah.
Then they did the calculations and they found out, no, it's not. It's not like the spiral galaxy isn't like having an arm that's sweeping through space,
Right. Or a turntable. Yeah.
or a turntable, or turning it, because if that had been the case, it would be all tightly wound up. So they knew something else was going on.
Hmm.
And then they realized that the arms themselves were density waves. They were density waves, meaning that so it wasn't a material thing, is what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah.
It wasn't a material thing. It was a synergistic effect of all of the gravitational interactions of the stars themselves. And it resulted in an arm, a density wave arm sweeping through. And as it swept through,
Mhm.
it ignited stars. So when we look up at a spiral galaxy, we see this arm, because all of the stars have come bursting forth because of the presence of the density wave. And then as the wave moves on, the brightest of the stars blow up, and so they're no longer there. So what we've discovered in the Milky Way is one of the ways it organizes itself
Mhm.
is by having these waves sweep through and affect all of the matter in the galaxy. And so then the question to ask now is, are those waves, or something similar to them, are they involved with the ongoing evolution of Earth?
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, it's not just those waves sweep through, the major ones, on the order of 70 million years. But that's just at the macro level. Maybe there are all kinds of more nuanced waves that are sweeping through as well. And maybe they've activated waves on Gaia that are sweeping through.
Because what you're describing so perfectly correlates with our experiences in this ecstatic waking
Oh,
dream
wow.
state.
Wow.
Couple of things. We experience waves of just sheer bliss and energy sweeping through us. It comes in waves. We spin in spiral.
I just,
I
so
can
we're at the
answer a
stage of,
piece
say
of that. I can
it
answer
again,
a piece of
Laura.
that. Van Poel just described corkscrewing in our tongue. I mean, that's such a common experience.
Yeah.
You're going to find it so much in the artwork of the ancients. So we just have to assume they were too.
They were
And
documented.
then flourishing. The grant that Chris and Todd Van Poel and Paul and I are trying to write is about human flourishing. Why does this generosity and awe and wonder and love and bliss and emotional, why does that just wave through us? We're not trying to
wow.
get there. It
Yeah.
just arises. Why is it that when we plug in, it's like the mother loving us? We feel the love
Wow.
of the universe.
Beautiful.
It's loving us. It's
Beautiful.
embracing us. It's blessing us. Why? It's just there. It's like you open up the font. There it is. Put your finger in the socket. There it is. So what you're describing is just like, I can so relate. And I think you talk about waves coming through. We have an intertechnology, antenna, receiver, transmit. Well, we're picking that up. We're picking that up in our direct experience.
Beautiful. I
It just
love it.
Exactly correlates.
I love that.
So yeah, I would believe, that these are waves coming through. We're being lit up.
Wow. Monica.
There's something else really special about
I love
thought.
that.
I love that too.
Yeah.
And there's another thing that's really special about the density waves coming through when you think about it that way, because when you have a density wave, it's causing more hydrogen atoms to come closer to one another, which is what is causing the igniting of the star. So when we think about things like dreams or states that we're in, it points to the importance of having a relationality, of being in the presence of a certain number. Number is so important. A certain number of other entities that are participating in what it is that you're participating in order for something to burst forward, in order for that potency to exist. So the dense, and in some sense, even the presence of all the people from all the different places that we're from makes possible, even in a group like this, certain potencies to happen, certain insights to burst forward, and certain
Because we're activating it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
like, the 10 to the 42, 10 to the 51, what is it, Brian?
57.
10 to the 57 hydrogen atoms have to be present in close proximity with one another to light the star. So if I was a hydrogen atom, I'd want to be in the proximity with other hydrogen atoms for exactly that number to be part of a unified differentiation going forward,
Think of the ecstatic experience those atoms are having. Quite the dance. Yeah. Oh, interesting. So we're based on ritual. We go, how is it that we get to stick our finger in how do we activate ritual? So ritual is a ceremony to pay attention, to honor, to respect, to activate. It's so interesting.
It's something physiologically that shifts when we turn our attention to that by
It's a
allowing
formalized
ourselves.
method of directing our
Well,
attention.
the ritual brings the group together in
Yeah.
that,
First thing, yes.
into that particular common shared experience,
The ritual is the density wave.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like we can activate
Thank
the
you.
song lines. The universe has created these song lines enveloped within them. It's just up to us to activate them.
Yeah.
To say, yes, come, let's engage.
Yeah.
Yeah. To love, right? I think it's just, it's love. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
I want to say that quite the ride with you two. Do you want to talk a little bit about your next appearance? No, Monica, don't.
Okay, go ahead.
Monica and Brian will come back on September 17th. What are we going to cover? Brian, I don't even think we scratched the surface of your story. We talked about so much of it, but there's so much more that you could share with us. You were so invited. But what are you going to talk about on the 17th
of September?
Yeah, let's do a little promo here. Monica, thank you for being our friend for like 30 years. And
Well,
then
thank you for being
making all
mine.
this happen.
I love you guys. And I love the way you banter. I just love it.
Monica and I would meet with
Mhm.
her, yeah, in coffee shops, and we'd be
Yeah,
talking, and
Monica and David and you and I would sit down to coffee, and
yeah,
you two would go at it. And
yeah, yeah.
it was fabulous.
So, 2 or 3 years of work, Monica and I were putting together a series of videos that tell the story of the rise of the noosphere. And the noosphere is described in various ways. One is as a planetary mind. Another is as a superorganism. But the one I like best is from Teilhard de Chardin, who invented the concept. The noosphere for him was a thinking Earth.
Oh, I love that.
Thinking Earth. So we've arrived at a change in evolution of our planet, where the thinking of one species has formed an envelope around the entire planet. And so we're on
A brain of brains, you've described it.
brain of brains. Yes.
Mhm.
And so then the one way to talk about the rise of the noosphere is to speak of the birth of Homo sapiens. And we track that all the way through in these videos. So we'll be presenting that. Monica, how would you describe it?
I think you just did wonderful describing it.
Okay.
It'll be a surprise. We'll pick a couple of videos and maybe describe all of the aspects that we identified as being part of the rising noosphere.
But yeah, and let me just add one thing. This hooks in exactly with Tyler Volk's work and what we were just describing, because Monica and I went through and identified the components that had to be put together in order for the noosphere to really rise up. So it really is an extension of that conversation we had with
You
Tyler.
also described the James Webb Space Telescope as the invention of the noosphere. It
Yes.
came through that,
Yes.
among other things. I would say Zoom technology is part of it. The internet, right? We just want to connect. We want to reach out. We want to see further and farther.
I mean,
One of the aspects of the noosphere is a matrix of knowledge, and that
living
matrix
library.
has this genetic history that goes way back all through human cultural evolution. So, like, we didn't invent the car, we didn't invent the equation, so it's got the genetic history, and then this is a matrix of a physical structure of relationships that are already embedded, that every human being is born into. And if you're not born into that, you cannot become human. And it takes a long time to become socialized into our physical matrix. But there's also a mind-like aspect of the noosphere that accompanies the physical aspect of the tools, and that mind is like cerebralization. It's becoming more complex over time. Then there's another aspect would be population, things wanting to happen at a certain time. So we see human populations changing over time between, Paleolithic, Neolithic, classical, modern.
Adapting to the needs and the possibilities of their day.
Yeah, but the population as well, can we live in just small hunter-gatherer groups, or can we bring together, with different levels of complexification, we bring larger and larger numbers of people together. And now we are a global community.
From tribe to hive is what we were just discussing just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Social cooperation for the betterment of us all. We're going to need that. I mean, isn't it interesting that we're at this time in history where all of this possibility, the vision is here, the technology is here, the human will has got to then now come up, but we can leap across the abyss that we're faced with, right? Maybe it has to be a do or die for us to finally get it together to make the leap to this golden age and its potential. What do you think? Is it no accident that all of this is coming together at this moment in time?
No
Like it
accident.
was?
No accident.
No accident.
No, that's what I meant when I was saying that the primordial plasma knew how to do things. You see, so the process we've gone through, so much of that is coming to a focal point.
Well,
Yeah.
somebody was just telling me that the baby chick in its shell needs to battle its way out that shell. It needs to exert itself in
Yeah.
order to get together the life force energy and the gumption to then thrive.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what we're doing. We're just trying to break out of our shell collectively,
I'm getting
all
there.
right?
Yeah,
But we're,
It's going to
we're
take
caught
every
up,
ounce of us. Go
we're
ahead,
caught
Mom.
up in, we're caught up in processes of convergence and converging, converging systems are also converging. And so it's happening at an accelerated pace. And along the line, it produces abundance for those who are part of it. So
And the resources needed to carry on the journey. I would characterize that. Yeah.
I love that image of the little chick hitting on the egg, you know, and it goes back to, you referred to this in the first minute of our time together when you talked about the need to deconstruct certain aspects.
Mhm.
So certain philosophical assumptions have got to be deconstructed, certain, you know, historical assumptions. And I love that little image. We're like little chicks, you know, pecking away, you know, and that was one of the things that I did in Cosmogenesis. I wanted to identify the way in which the structures of my existence were holding me prisoner.
Right. We've got
So
the
breaking
blinders
through
on
them.
in terms of our
Yeah.
collective worldview. We
I
need
think
to,
we need to break it apart, and that involves everything in our lives, not just sort of like knowing something.
it really gets down to a shift in our worldview, this paradigm shift, doesn't it?
Mhm.
And that is about the new story, who we are,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
we're capable of, what is the world asking us to be?
Yeah.
What does the universe want of us? We've been telling it what we want of it, and it's time for us to ask. We've been talking with Brian Tucker a lot about this. What does it want from us?
Yeah.
Start listening.
Yeah. Right.
Start, yeah.
One thing it wants is Kuyamunge Institute. It
Oh.
wants the institute.
Yes. Well,
Thank you.
Of course,
Thank you for that. Yeah.
we owe all the honor to Dr.
Hey, we're
Goodman and
just-
her original foundation of this, and
Yeah.
we get to ride that wave. And
We're just
and-
holding up the tent poles and we invite you all to come and play.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Want to open your bandwidth? We got a very ancient technique, but I really want to honor our ancestors in all of this,
Right.
right? I want to honor them that they had this capacity. It's built into our physiology. That's the message of Goodman. Everybody can do this. It's like all of our birthright. They were doing this early on. And yeah, it's now to the point where more tools in our toolbox to finally get to the next stage.
Sure.
The evolution is,
Mhm.
I guess it's a wave through us, right?
Yeah.
It's pushing us forward.
Well,
Isn't
but
it?
what
It's
Tyler,
going to take many generations, though. Monica and I were having this discussion. I think I find inspiration from Buckminster Fuller. He was inventing the solutions for tomorrow today, so they'd be at hand.
Yeah,
And I think this is such a multi-generational project.
definitely.
Trust the universe. I'm going to trust that evolution. It's been at
Yeah.
it for 14 billion years. It's
Yeah.
going to make it. Right? I trust. I
Yeah.
trust. Do your part.
Yeah.
We may not see it in my
Pass it
lifetime,
forward,
but I
pass
trust
it
that
forward.
this is like the steamroller is upon us, right? It's
Right.
rolling its way through.
Okay.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
Do our
Beautifully
part.
said.
Yeah,
Beautifully
trust.
said.
And then celebrate the beauty of it and the majesty of it.
Right.
Wow.
Well,
Thank you, Brian, for all the work that you do. Thank you, Monica, for all
your
the work that
incredible
you do.
support and who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And final thoughts at all,
Yeah.
Brian?
Give us some concluding.
I guess I would say that I think dialogues like this are an advanced evolution of sex.
the universe is sexual.
Yeah.
I would say that.
It's a way of entering into deep intimacy
Yeah.
profound
Mhm.
emotion
Yeah.
and togetherness. And we're just so fortunate to
Yeah.
have this opportunity.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
That was my experience.
Yeah, mine too. Yeah, absolutely.
for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've been evolving so
Mhm.
fast in current society and recognizing some of the diversity that's been ignored and all these different aspects that need to change. There's lots of stuff that are on the table that are in the news and trying to awaken us all. But within that journey, we have to also remember the unification that we have together. So when we have the change from the people of color to the white guy to all the different aspects of what's going on in terms of our recognition of what's been done wrong and what needs to be corrected, let's come together. Let's create real true tribal community together to try to solve some of these problems and move forward.
I also want to say that evolutionary biology designs us to find ecstasy in that bonding, intimate bonding,
Yeah.
but it also has designed us for flourishing and to find joy and ecstasy and bliss
Yeah.
in this frequency. You plug your finger in that socket of the universe, it's blissful. We are designed for we have GPS units designed to seek that out.
That's
We're
great.
humming
That's great.
pigeons for that.
Yeah.
That's great.
That is our elixir.
Mhm.
We're designed to want that, to be nourished by that.
Beautiful.
I think our success is inevitable if we just listen and let it be, right?
I agree.
Thank you,
you.
Monica. Thank you, Brian, and thank all of
Yeah.
you who have participated.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.